Yesterday there was a major Nintendo Direct that featured a lot of new gameplay, a lot of big new games, and most importantly, the release of the long-rumored Metroid Prime Remaster. Now, I decided to stay up all night playing this game because this is just such an interesting series. Metroid is a franchise that truly created its own genre, the Metroidvania, and going through this game again for the first time in so many years, I was actually blown away by how this feels more like a remake and less than a remaster. But let's talk about that. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, this is going to be a review of the game as I've played so far. I haven't fully finished it, so if there is some sort of game-breaking glitch during the ending credits, I haven't seen that. But after 6 hours with the game itself, this feels like a completely new experience rebuilt from the ground up. Now, you may be asking, what is it about this that feels so spectacularly unique? What is it about this that makes it different from the original game that came out back in the early 2000s? Well, the biggest difference, besides just the visuals, is the incredibly retuned gameplay itself. I love the new controls. What they've decided to do is that when this came out back on the original GameCube, it was heavily focused on this lock-on idea, where because you had to play it with a GameCube, and honestly this was still during that era where people were trying to figure out how to control first-person shooters and stuff, the game, as fun as it was back in the day, I didn't like that you basically would just click from target to target. In the remaster, they have completely redone the controls to be a standard dual stick option, meaning you just move with one stick, you aim with one stick, and it feels spectacular. Being able to so easily just strafe around enemies, charge up a super attack, and unleash each of your new abilities as you unlock them, the game itself is just so freaking delicious to play. I mean, this is just such a fundamental rebuild that it feels like the AI itself can't keep up. I will say, the two tiny gripes I have about this game, and both of them are very, very tiny, is that it does sort of suffer from the problem that certain games have, which is that when you fix the previously archaic controls, the enemies just don't feel hard. Whether it is the bosses, the random bees, or the weird armored guys you fight, everybody feels laughably easy because the controls are just so good. They straight up are not programmed to be able to keep up. I mean, people are going to be posting no-hit runs of this game probably within the next hour because it's just that easy to never be touched. But that also brings me to the other part of these new controls that I feel like drastically improves the experience, which is that Metroid Prime has some of the first ever 3D platforming sections, meaning that it is a first-person shooter of sorts, and sometimes there will be big moving floating objects and you have to jump from one to the other to the next. And in the original game, I actually didn't really like those segments. I didn't hate them, but they felt a little bit clunky because you just have this big old thick visor on your face and the platforms are at times rather small, so if you missed a jump, it sucked to fall into lava or fall off a cliff and have to climb back up. With the new controls and the fact that these sticks are so perfectly freaking sensitive, I never fell a single time. And I truly mean that as the highest compliment. It is brilliant how much they managed to reconstruct the decent controls of the GameCube and make it a million times better and so much more modernized. They've also added in an easy mode. I don't think anybody will really want to use this, but if for some reason you're trying to show this game to your kids, or maybe if you just don't have very good reaction time, you can just use the lock-on system and the newly developed casual mode, which basically makes it so that Samus doesn't take much damage. But now let's talk about the true part of this game that is the most instantly striking, which is, of course, the completely recontextualized graphics. This is why people online are actually debating if this is a remaster or if it is technically a remake. They have redone every single brick of the entire game. They've redone computer screens. They've redone every bit of digital readouts. They've done every enemy again. I mean, it is a fundamental rebuilding of the original 2002 classic. And it's crazy to say this, but I think this is some of the best Nintendo Switch graphics I have ever seen. Whether you're playing this on handheld or playing it on a big, huge TV like I decided to do, it is a solid 60 frames a second, and it's gorgeous. It is so good looking that at times I would actually turn off my HUD, because you can do that in the options menu, and just look at the scenery, gawk at waterfalls, noticing the little bits that way the like water will actually bounce off your gun in different directions depending on where you're facing. This is not just a good looking game, it's not just a spectacular looking game. This, in my opinion, is a new game. But I want to talk a bit more about just the nature of Metroid Prime. This game follows the adventures of Samus Aran. She is basically trying to hunt a bunch of evil space pirates. One of the aspects I've grown to respect more and more with the original Metroid Prime is just how silent the storytelling is. I mean, it really is a game that gives you pretty much an opening cutscene saying, hey, go get these evil lizard people and try and save the galaxy. But then after that, it's pretty dang silent. There are cutscenes, but the cutscenes do not have dialogue. There's grunts and moans that come from our main character when you get hit or fall off a particularly tall ledge, but for the most part, it is a completely lonely experience. Samus is not talking to herself. She's not trying to quip out one-liners, and I feel like that just really impacts the deep fear of this adventure in a way. I love the fact that while you're trying to explore using the 3D map, a lot of times you are a bit confused. You are kind of figuring out, all right, which direction do I go? The big kind of elements that makes Metroid a Metroid game is you're constantly unlocking hundreds of tiny abilities. A double jump, a boost ball, the ability to turn into a tiny little sphere and go through gaps and stuff like that. There's something that's just so naturally conducive about the idea of constantly upgrading your character bit by bit. You see a high up ledge and think, okay, how do I get that? And then you unlock the next ability like charge shot or detonation bombs that let you go a little bit deeper into this planet of Talon 4. I love this game a lot, but seeing it all again and getting a chance to appreciate it in a more modernized context, I do think this is probably the very best Metroid game we've ever gotten. I still like Metroid Fusion a little bit more because I'm obsessed with the original Game Boy, but this game is just so fantastic. It's so new. It's so fresh. The only other tiny gripe I have is the fact that, honestly, I do wish that they had created a checkpoint system. This is manual save only, which means that sometimes I did at points lose 30 minutes or an hour of progress, because in each of the major zones, whether it is the ice area or the underground magma pits, there's typically two major save points, one towards the start and one about halfway through. Now, this game does, of course, encourage backtracking. It's not like it's huge. I mean, most people will probably beat this game in just a couple hours, so it's not like you're going to be running across the entirety of freaking creation to try and go and save your game. But it is still incredibly frustrating when you accidentally stumble upon a boss, which does happen. I mean, there's a lot of mini bosses, but there was a time where I accidentally forgot to save for like 45 minutes, and then I stumbled into this plant jerk who immediately pollinated my butthole. And I was actually a little bit shaken. I was like, crap. So I ended up losing 45 minutes of progress, and let me tell you, it was a little bit frustrating. I wish that they had just created some sort of checkpoint system so that before you have a major encounter, it would just automatically save the game, or maybe give me a warning that, hey, you're about to scan this with your visor and then you're going to get immediately ambushed. Other than that, the only other issue is sometimes on a technical level, there is sometimes some aliasing, which means that sometimes the graphics look a little bit funky in some spots. But honestly, with how much they're trying to do, with how much they're trying to display, the aliasing is barely noticeable. This, in my opinion, is a remake. A remaster does not fit just how glorious this game is. It's difficult to try and put a score on something like this because it is just a fundamental reconstruction of a game that came out literally 2 decades ago. But if I had to give it a score, I would say this is a 10 out of 10. It just manages to maximize the efforts that made the game glorious back in the day, while also making it feel fresh and new. I like Metroid Prime, but now I gotta say, I downright love it. This is $40. If you have a Nintendo Switch, I 100% think you should buy this. It is perfect. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. And please, keep dreaming. Man, this is so cool. Wow, this is exactly what I wanted.